While harvesting his crops, Farmer Stephen discovered a massive, strange ball, half his size, hidden among the produce. Its sudden appearance in his field was baffling. However, as Stephen inspected the ball, he realized its true identity, which sent him running for his life. When Stephen first spotted this strange ball in his field, he didn't think much of it. However, when he realized that it was ruining his crops, he was determined to find out what it was and how it got on his field. So, he decided to break it open. He grabbed some tools and started chipping away. It took him a while, but when he finally saw what was inside this ball, he couldn't stop himself from screaming. He dropped everything from his hands and ran away as fast as he could. This was dangerous. He needed to get away from this thing as quickly as possible. What had he seen inside this ball? And why did it make him scream? And how did this ball even end up on his field in the first place? But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. Stephen smiled as he looked outside through his kitchen window. He was enjoying a nice cup of tea after lunch, and he stared at his fields, abundant with crops, ready to be harvested. Stephen took pride in the fact that he still did all of his work by himself. He was old enough to retire. He had been for years, but he didn't want to think about it. It was heavy work, that was true. But Stephen didn't mind. He enjoyed working outside and using his hands, and he got bored if he sat inside too long. His competitors were younger farmers about half his age, who used the most advanced technology and, therefore, worked a lot faster. However, Stephen had simply decided not to worry about them. As long as he had his own customers and his crops were healthy, everything was fine. After Stephen finished his lunch, he gathered all of the tools that he needed for the harvest and headed out to the fields. However, when he got there, he was greeted by an unexpected sight. In the middle of his field, there was a huge ball about half his size. He carefully approached it to take a closer look at it, but he had no idea what it was. It kind of looked like a giant, deformed pumpkin. Stephen, however, did not grow pumpkins. He decided that whatever this thing was, he needed to remove it off his fields. It was too heavy for him to pick up, so he needed to find another way to do it, and he took his time thinking of a plan. Farmer Stephen decided to roll the mysterious ball off his field. With determination, he pushed it, surprised by how much lighter it was than it appeared. As the ball rolled, Stephen noticed a faint chemical smell, but he brushed it off, focusing instead on protecting his crops. He rolled the ball to the edge of his field, where the ground sloped toward an overgrown patch of land near the woods, and left it there. Tired from the day's work, Stephen postponed moving it further until the next day. That night, Stephen's hands itched, likely from the hard labor, he thought. The next morning, sipping coffee, he glanced out over his fields and froze. Something was wrong. Rushing outside, he found large sections of his crops withered and lifeless. The damage was severe, far worse than he could have anticipated. Each dead plant felt like a personal loss. Stephen suspected the ball. Kneeling in the dirt, he inspected the dead patches, noticing they aligned with the ball's path across his field. The soil around the area looked desolate, confirming his fears. Determined to stop further destruction, Stephen began clearing out the ruined crops, dragging them into piles to prevent the damage from spreading. Exhausted but resolute, he vowed, "You won't ruin me." Later, Stephen approached the ball with tools from his shed. Striking it with a pickaxe, he was met with a sharp metallic ring, but the surface remained unyielding. Doubt crept in. Was it dangerous? He paused and decided to seek advice. Showing photos of the ball to his neighbors, he asked if they had seen anything like it. No one recognized it, though they agreed to keep an eye out. Returning home, Stephen's hands burned worse than before. He washed them thoroughly, applied lotion for relief, and decided to wear gloves for protection. Determined, he faced the ball again, his strikes now driven by frustration and desperation to uncover the truth behind the strange object that had seemingly ruined his livelihood. With every strike, a peculiar odor intensified, filling the air around Stephen. Oblivious to the ball's true nature, he continued his assault until, with a final forceful hit, it cracked open. What spilled out sent him reeling. Countless dead bugs and insects poured onto the ground. Horror gripped Stephen as he stumbled backward, a scream escaping his lips. He bolted to his house, slamming the door behind him, and rushed to the bathroom. Scrubbing his hands and body under scalding water, Stephen muttered, "Got to get it all off." The burning itch slowly subsided, though his panic remained. As he sat on his bed, Stephen's thoughts raced. Someone did this on purpose, he realized, connecting the dots. Determined to uncover the truth, he donned protective gear and returned to the field. Gathering the remnants of the ball, he sealed them in a heavy-duty bag and stored it securely in his shed, away from sunlight and prying eyes. "Out of sight for now," he whispered, shutting the shed door. Reaching out to his farming network yielded results. After persistent questioning, a friend revealed that Joshua, a neighboring farmer and competitor, might be involved. Joshua's farm had been struggling, and their rivalry, though unspoken, had never turned malicious until now. Stephen couldn't believe it, especially after their recent interactions. Earlier that day, he confronted Joshua directly, demanding answers. "I didn't do anything with that ball, Stephen," Joshua insisted, his voice defensive. "I swear, I've never seen it before." Joshua's voice was firm, his eyes steady. Despite the evidence, there was a part of Stephen that wanted to believe him, torn between the instincts of a neighbor and the suspicions of a victim. That had been a lie. Joshua had indeed crafted the ball himself, disguising it to blend seamlessly with the crops. Inside, he had filled it with a potent poison, calculated to kill any plant it touched. Stephen pieced together the truth from clues and whispers among the community. Without confronting Joshua again, Stephen took a drastic step. Under the cover of dusk, he scattered the pieces of the toxic ball across Joshua's fields. Each fragment was a seed of destruction, sown with a heavy heart but firm resolve. "If my fields suffer, so will his," Stephen thought grimly, the weight of his actions heavy on his shoulders. The next morning, the devastation was apparent. Joshua's fields, once vibrant and thriving, were now a landscape of death. As the sun rose, revealing the extent of the damage, Joshua's despair was palpable. There was no saving the crops. It was too late. The poison had done its work, more thoroughly and quickly than even Stephen had anticipated. Furious, Joshua confronted Stephen, his face contorted with anger. "You need to pay for this, Stephen." "What have you done?" he demanded, his voice thick with accusation. Stephen met his gaze with feigned ignorance, shrugging lightly. "I really don't know what you're talking about, Joshua," he said coolly, maintaining his composure. Inside, however, his conscience wrestled with the morality of his actions. Luckily, the other farmers were disgusted by Joshua's actions. They rallied around Stephen, offering not just their sympathy but also their support. To help Stephen recover from the loss, his fellow farmers lent him some of their modern machinery. These tools were a far cry from what Stephen was used to, featuring the latest technology in farming. With these machines, he could harvest and plant much faster, helping him to quickly make up for the lost crops and potentially save his season. The efficiency of the modern machinery combined with his hard-earned farming skills proved to be a successful mix. "Couldn't have done it without you all," he often said, heartfelt gratitude coloring his words. Meanwhile, Joshua's situation worsened. With no way to save his crops or restore his farm to its former glory, he was forced to make a tough decision. Eventually, he sold his farm, leaving the community he had once been a part of. The land was passed on to others who hoped to cleanse it of the past and start anew. Stephen continued to work his farm with joy and dedication for a few more years, buoyed by the support of his community and the success he had managed to maintain. When he finally decided to retire, it was with a sense of fulfillment and pride. He left his farm in capable hands, content that he had overcome the challenges and ended his career on a high note.